Okay, who remembers where we left off?
In the road.
In the road?
Oh yeah, we were
At
on
the
the road. I figured out she was a prisoner.
We figured out that Circi and Jack had just rescued and were transporting a prisoner. Maybe. She was wearing
They
manacles.
think.
Yeah, she was wearing manacles. And what are manacles?
Handcuffs.
Handcuffs. Okay. So, Jack and Circi are riding down the road, and they realize this, and it's getting dark. So what do? Do they keep going, or do they pull over?
Oh, you never told us.
I didn't.
Yeah, what's it?
We're deciding.
They are going to pull over. So Jack and Circi pull over the wagon. They find a little place on the road with an area off the trees that they can pull over onto. They go around. They start securing everything. Make sure that the horses have the necessary water and their food, and they have everything that they need. So then they walk around to the back. And Circi takes his axe, lifts up the flap just a little bit. Not sure what's going to happen. Last time, Jack got kicked in the face. So he wanted to be careful. So he lifts it up just a little bit and he sees the lady in red, in the red dress. And she's sleeping. So they kind of look around. They can't see too much because it's dark. It's dark inside and it's getting dark outside. So they look around and they can make out that there's a couple boxes in there, but not really much. It's pretty sparse.
You can use this for pillows.
You can use the boxes for pillows?
Yeah.
Well, that's what she's doing. She's sleeping on one of the boxes. She's got her back to them, but she's snoring a little bit. Just a little. So the two of them decide, okay, we are going to set up and camp out outside because we're not sure that we can trust her. And we're not sure that she's not going to try and hurt us in the middle of the night.
She killed the person who was trying to save her.
Well, she stabbed them in the back. She didn't kill them. Remember?
Yeah, she stabbed them.
So, and we don't know that they were trying to save her.
What?
We don't know that they were trying to save her. That's just what Circi thinks.
Think they were trying to rescue.
That's what he thinks. So, they start setting up camp with the owl circling above, watching.
The owl is
Still there.
basically the eyes of the wizard.
Yeah. The wizard looks through the eyes of the owl. That's right.
Yep.
So they set up camp, and they set up a tiny little fire, just enough to keep them warm. And they've got some bed rolls, which is basically just a blanket and a pillow.
Yeah.
They don't have a
They're
tent,
connected.
and it starts to mist.
They're sleeping like they slept last time in a dark forest.
So,
It's like camping in the woods.
well, they're camping outside the woods,
Yeah. they're
right next to the
outside
woods. Right next to the woods.
Like
So-
that.
It starts to mist. That means tiny little drops of water
Mhm.
are falling out of the sky.
It's like cloud.
Just enough to get you damp, not enough to get you wet.
It's like cloudy.
It's a lot like fog. In fact, it kind of gets foggy. And as they're sitting there, looking around, getting ready for bed, there's a sound in the woods. They hear some branches break. No, it's probably,
The owl landing.
well, probably not an owl. It's probably a deer
The
or
owl has been watching.
maybe a squirrel fell out of a tree. Yeah, not a big deal.
Big deal. Squirrels climb trees.
Oh yeah, squirrels climb trees.
Did you not know this?
These really
Look
heavy
outside.
squirrels.
So, a little time goes by and they hear another commotion, some leaves rustling.
Someone just go check that out. alone.
You want one of them to go alone?
Yeah.
So they kind of look at each
Bad
other.
luck.
It's like terrible, dude.
They're about asleep when they hear this. They kind of look at each other. Seems a little suspicious. So Circe reaches over and makes sure that his axe is within arm's reach. Jack kind of looks around and
Gonna decapitate it.
wishes he hadn't gotten rid of his stick
Wait, when did he get rid of his stick?
when he got on the wagon.
Oh.
He put it down.
I
So
never knew that. Don't think you told us
yeah,
that.
there's some rustling.
Yeah, I heard it.
It's like the heartbeat.
It was Raph falling down the stairs.
That's right there.
Yeah, but Raph,
It's Bob.
it's Joe.
So anyhow,
Yeah.
so they sit there for just a minute trying to figure out if there's something happening, if it's just the
Probably
woods.
is.
There's sounds in the woods. It happens. And then the rustling starts up again and gets closer. They look
Yeah,
in the woods.
something's happening in the woods.
It's dark at this point and they can't really see much.
They should have bought a flashlight.
But they see, well, this is old times. They don't have flashlights. They have torches. But they don't have any. So the sound gets a little closer. They look up. They can see movement. It's very dark. They can't
I
make out
said
what it is.
something was happening.
They can't make out what it is. So then, all of a sudden, a small deer walks out of the woods. And it walks right through their camp, stepping over the men in their blankets. And walks into the road. And then-
Hopefully a car doesn't come.
There's no cars.
It's the medieval times.
Oh,
There's no cars.
that thing with the king on.
A wagon.
Shh. So, no, nobody's driving their wagon. They're on the road, sleeping, next to the road. So, the deer walks into the road.
In the road.
They find this very strange. Deer don't normally walk over people. They're very skittish,
No.
and they generally jump and bound across roads. They don't walk casually into them.
And Julian.
As they're looking at each other, wondering what's going on, it disappears.
Bum, bum, bum.
There's a faint blue light
It is the ghost.
that surrounds the deer,
Fuck's sake.
and then it disappears.
Stop swearing.
It went.
They look at each other, look back to where the deer disappeared. And Circe says, "Well, I'm not sure what to do about this.
Hide.
We might want to move on. Break camp. Keep going." So Jack thinks to himself. And he says, "Well, maybe the deer was trying to tell us a message."
To disappear.
Well,
If you go there, you'll disappear.
Jack says, you know the woods pretty well. I'm sure we could look around and see if we can't see anything just to make sure we're safe.
I would not do that.
Circe's not so sure this is a great idea.
Same.
Disappearing deer are generally something outside of his category. The last magic that he dealt with kidnapped his daughter and took her away. That's why he's here in the first place, chasing after the wizard that stole his daughter.
Did they
Trying to get her
disappear?
back. No, they didn't disappear.
When did they disappear already?
So, after talking back and forth, suddenly they hear another twig. They wonder themselves, is it going to be another deer? Is it the same deer? We don't know.
Is this that would be beyond?
So, No Matrix, dear. What are you talking about?
Deja vu. Go back in the Matrix.
No. So the two of them decide, okay, we either need to pick up and move. Or we need to go and investigate. Because we can't just sit here and wait for something to come and potentially hurt us. So, realizing that it's not safe to travel on the road at night, and they are just as great of a danger of running into something traveling on the road as they are staying where they are, they realize that they should probably make this area safe. Dig in and
Find a hole.
and investigate.
Safe.
So
Did you say find a hole?
they roll out of bed,
Safe.
they grab their equipment, and they start making their way into the woods.
That was
I would not do that.
that echoed.
It's very loud for a tiny dog.
Yeah.
So anywho, so they make their way into the woods, stepping very, very carefully. Circi in the front, Jack in the back, looking to make sure that no one comes up from behind them. They haven't made it 10 feet in before Jack finds a nice big stick that he can grab and thinks to himself he should probably get himself a weapon at some point, because these sticks just aren't working. So
He dropped the stick.
he did drop the stick. Yeah. So
He needs an actual weapon at some point, not just a stick.
so
That's what he said.
so he grabs the stick and he follows after Circi. Now Circi is a very large man, and he's bumping into things.
So she kind of.
His
Sounds
furs
like
are
a
getting
golden-
caught on brushes.
Sorry.
He's
It's okay.
snagging things and
Might,
being rather loud. So neither of them heard footsteps that were sneaking up next to them, because Circi was so noisy in the woods.
So except for them, they didn't hear anything.
Yeah, and it's very dark. So with them stomping around and making all this noise and breaking the branches, they didn't hear the two sets of footsteps sneaking up on them from the side.
That's very weird.
So
Right.
they made it about 100 yards in, not very far, just one football field,
How many feet is that?
300 feet.
What do you want to be exact?
What?
Because accuracy matters.
In what land?
In what land?
Accuracy.
So anywho,
The United States of America.
America.
shh. So 100 yards in, or 300 feet, all of a sudden, two men from the side rush over, grab Jack, and run past.
The other people see?
Circi hears this behind him, turns around quickly. Jack is gone. He hears footsteps running into the woods
Can't let me run.
to his right. He takes off after them. He can't see anything. Quickly runs right into a tree.
That was a good
Bam.
idea.
Kaboom.
Thwack.
He shakes it off. Starts running again.
Let's do another tree.
Jack was picked up and sprinted away. And all of a sudden, instead of going sideways, he was going up. He still couldn't see anything. There was a bag on his head quickly. So he couldn't see through the bag. It was already dark. He's in the woods. There's hands on him.
Take the bag off with your.
And now he's going up. And then suddenly, he's bound and tied to a tree.
They do that really fast.
They did that really fast.
He was gonna die. I'm dead.
Everyone feels like they're dead.
But I'm
Circe finds his bearings, shakes off the tree that just hit him in the face,
Is everyone in his whole family.
and runs back into the woods after his friend Jack. And trips, sprawling out in front of him, leaves in his mouth, dirt all over his face.
That's disgusting.
He turns to get up, and there's brambles.
That
It's like branches and twigs and that kind of stuff. Holding down his hand, he looks over, tries to shake his hand free, and the vines tighten around his wrist.
Oh, no more circulation for Jack.
He looks around, and he sees a little sprig. He sees a little sprig
just
waving its hand. It is a tree, a very, very small tree, about yay big,
It's like a Groot.
and it is like a
It's
Groot.
like when I
It's like a
fly.
very young Groot.
Remember the Groot in the plant pot that was doing a little wiggle dance?
It's bigger than that.
Yeah. Trying
It's like a Katie-sized Groot.
yeah, like fly. And
Yes.
it's like fly. It's like this
Yes, a Groot.
Here, lay on top of my leg.
So anywho,
big. Uh-oh.
Get on my
That was
feet.
right in my stomach.
Circe sees the sprig. He thinks to himself, you know, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to find Jack?
I don't like my belly.
He stands up, grabs his other wrist with his other hand, and pulls with all his might. The sprig that was attached to it with his vines gets pulled along with it and falls to the ground, getting dragged towards him. Circe grabs the vines and starts pulling him closer. At this point, the sprig starts to panic, takes both of its hands and digs into the ground, sending its little roots out.
We gonna grow one.
Circe is a very strong man. He just keeps pulling. There's this tug of war back and forth as the vines pull and stretch.
Is that on his foot?
No, it's on his hand.
It's on his hand. He's holding on to it, pulling it closer and closer. And then, with one mighty heave, he rips it out of the ground, throwing it towards himself, and grabs it right by the stalk, or the trunk, and he shakes it. He says, "Where is my friend? Where did you take it?"
I don't think it can talk.
And it starts to shake.
It's
Throws its hands up. He follows the hands and sees 10 feet up a wiggling creature. He says, "You release him now."
Start wiggling. Bruh, this boy about to fall.
He says,
Bam.
"You release him. And you leave us be. We mean you no harm." He throws him to the ground.
Well, now they mean him harm. I mean, the sprig just got tossed to the ground.
He reaches down and picks up his axe,
I wanted to do that, Gabby.
points it at his friend.
They got
Says, "Cut him down, or I will cut down this tree." The sprig,
is in panic.
the sprig is worried. He was there to, he's a spirit meant to defend the forest. He was just trying to protect his land. He thought that these people were there to maybe steal some things or pillage his property. He just meant to scare them.
To save your friends.
He just meant to scare them. He didn't mean to hurt anyone or cause any problems. He certainly didn't want his friendly trees getting chopped down. So he quickly releases him.
It's like a prank turns into like a full threatened murder. Like,
Jack suddenly finds himself falling.
what did I tell you? Splat.
Before he knew it, he hits the ground and falls down right in front of Circi,
Please stop.
who grabs him by the back and picks him right up. Says, "On your feet, boy, before this tree tries to eat you."
Do it.
Trees
I dare
trying to
you.
eat
Jack
people?
turns around and sees the sprig. A tiny little leafless tree about 3 feet tall. Fairly humanoid
I think
shaped,
I've seen one.
wagging
It's
around.
like barely any leaves.
Katie, you haven't seen them.
And then he hears some rustling behind him. Turns and sees another one, a little bit shorter, about 2.5 feet tall. Realizes that these were probably the two that grabbed him, and why it was so easy for them to sneak up on him. So she starts to make his way out of the forest, 2.5 feet tall.
No, that. My feet aren't as big as yours.
5 feet. So Circi starts to make his way out of the forest. He looks at Jack and says, "You, stay close to me.
Otherwise you'll get snatched by more tiny trees.
We're heading out. And these trees will leave us be. And we'll leave something for them in the morning."
Baby trees.
If they don't, then you'll chop one of the trees
It
down.
didn't take long for them to work their way out of the forest and back to the
People.
back to the wagon. By the time they get there,
Everyone is asleep.
okay. By the time they get to the wagon,
What?
Going.
you okay?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
watching
yeah.
them fall apart.
Okay. So by the time they get to the wagon, there was a crowd of Sprigs that have been following them, nearly at least 12. Some bigger, some smaller. One as big as 8 feet tall and thick around the trunk. They make their camp, they lay down, and they watch as these Sprigs stand there from the tree line, staring at them.
Stop staring. I don't think trees have eyes.
Jack asks Circi, "Do you think they're just waiting for us to go to sleep so that they can kill us?"
No.
Yep.
Circi looks at Jack and says, "If they meant to kill us, they would have done it already.
Yeah.
I don't think they mean us any harm. They just want us out of their area.
Yeah.
So we'll rise early and we'll be out of their way." All night, the Sprigs stand watch over the two intruders of their land.
Oh, there's more than two.
And at first sunrise, one of the tiny ones throws a pebble at Circe's head.
Literally me.
You wouldn't do that.
You said you were
You bet I
Sam.
would. Like, skedaddle.
You said you were Sam.
Jack. There's no Sam.
Jack.
There might be a Sam. It's a cat.
Bruh, I am Sam. With the big sleeves. She sings, but like bad.
It's a cat that thinks it's a dog.
I think-
Because dogs are better.
No.
Yeah.
All animals are perfect. Except for crickets. Crickets can literally die. I hate crickets.
But dogs are best.
Oh. Once I found
Would a cat save you from the fire?
downstairs in
No, the cat would start the
basement.
fire.
Bruh, I am a cat.
Dogs are better.
Once,
Okay,
once I found
so. First light, one of the Sprigs throws a rock at Circe's head. Bounces off. He doesn't notice. He doesn't stir. So,
Bro, this boy dead.
the Sprig takes a slightly bigger rock and throws it at Circi. This one gets his attention, bouncing off with a thud and leaving a welt in the middle of his forehead. There's Circe's eyes jolt open. He sees the tiny sprig lifting up an even bigger rock. At this point, he jumps to his feet, grabs his axe. The sprig drops the rock, rushes back behind his friends.
It's like, dude, I was just doing the job.
I'm just trying to wake you up.
This is a full don't shoot the messenger moment.
The biggest sprig, the one that was 8 feet tall, clearly the oldest of the group, points to the sky and points down the road.
That's your message to Skedat.
Circi understands.
Follow
and
the
it's time
sun?
for them to go. He pokes Jack with his foot once or twice,
Don't,
just to get him awake.
blink, blink.
Says, Jack,
Get up, otherwise they're gonna
I
start
believe it
shooting.
is time for us to
Shoot.
leave.
Shoot.
They've watched over us, and they want us out of their area. They are uncomfortable with us here. So they quickly gather their things, get onto the wagon, and start off down the road.
Where's the others?
The others? What others?
The other people.
What other peoples?
What do you mean? The
Those
girl in
in
the
the
wagon.
groups.
Well, she's in the back, hopefully. Unless they took her.
Maybe.
So,
The
They
other
make their way
people
down the
was
road.
in the woods.
they make their way down the road.
The other people was in the woods.
Those are the Sprigs.
Katie, there's no one
No,
in the
not
woods.
Sprigs.
Yeah, those are the Sprigs. Those are the ones that grabbed Jack.
The
There wasn't people.
Jack
Yeah.
and the other person.
Jack and Circi.
They're the only peoples.
Those are the only peoples.
And an owl.
Yeah, it's
Owls are not
owl.
people.
Bruh, watch me say that they are.
Okay, you can say it. So anyway,
I'll say
There
it right
won't
now.
be
Owls are
owls.
people.
okay.
Owls
So,
will be
Owls
people.
have
So-
feelings
they make their way down the
What are you
road,
talking about?
and they get to the fork.
too. Eat the sweatshirt.
They get to where the road splits. After about a day and a half of
Why
travel,
on this panda?
they've gone rather quick and rode through the second night.
We both turned at the same time.
And they stop, pull over, because at this point, they need extra directions. Remember, they were supposed to turn right, or I'm sorry, they were supposed to turn left, but they need more directions after that.
Get the trees and ask them to wait to cross the net.
So, they pull over, and they both get off the front of the wagon, and they walk around to the back to ask their employer, where they're going next.
Also with handcuffs.
And with that, we are going to pause until tomorrow.
Cool beans.